Traders, how are you? With Marcello. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. This week we have the state of Alberta, Canada testing their emergency alert system. The country of the UK is doing the same thing. We have good economic data, both from China and the United States. And we even have a report that the BUSD, in addition to Bitfinex and the companies behind Tether USDT, were using sham companies to be able to get bank accounts. Let's go ahead and get started. And Elon Musk is also the richest man in the world again. We'll get that in just a second. So overall for the week, we had some pretty good economic data. The U.S. manufacturing activity slowed for the fourth consecutive month. Now that isn't good data. That's actually bad data. But there was new economic data on Friday that indicated that the U.S. services sector expanded for the second month in February. This basically means that it's providing a lot of information that the U.S. economy is resilient with what's going on in the world, because obviously we don't have the best economic data overall, but it's still kind of hanging in there. Overall for the week, the U.S. markets were mostly positive. Canada was positive as well. International markets were mostly higher, Italy being the biggest winner there in Europe. In Latin America, we have the Bolsa or exchange in Mexico being up almost 3%, most positive of all. Africa and the Middle East, take a look at the numbers here. Egypt looks like was the only negative one there. And then in the far East, we've had the Hang Seng in Hong Kong being the most positive, not only this week, but for the past several weeks. Bitcoin and crypto news. The Bank of Japan says that the digital yen pilot is going to start in April. This is what I always told you guys from the beginning that I thought was kind of the future, let's say, for crypto overall, because remember that we have the cryptocurrencies, even the stable coins, kind of the whole infrastructure that runs on blockchain. So now the governments are hanging on to that blockchain to be able to create their own digital currencies, the CBDCs, or what I very affectionately call government coin. And we're starting to see a lot of that, the news, let's say, of a lot of these new government coins coming out now. Silvergate Capital Core shares created almost 60% this week. They're a crypto-friendly lender that says that they're going to delay their annual report. That's obviously not very good news. The SEC, which is one of the main government bodies for the exchanges in the United States and securities, says that they're investigating their dealings with the previous second largest exchange that went bankrupt, FTX. Crypto companies behind Tether and Bitfinex is being reported that they use falsified documents and shell companies to get bank accounts. So that's not a good thing, because Tether, the USDT, is one of the biggest stablecoins that everybody uses. And another one of the biggest, which is BUSD, which is the stablecoin from Binance, Binance being the largest crypto exchange in the world. Coinbase, which is the largest crypto exchange in the US, is suspending the trading of BUSD. So it looks like the contagion of the situation in crypto hasn't gone away just yet. Overall for the week, Bitcoin was lower. It went down by 3.30%, just a touch over 23,000. But remember, that's kind of, it's really volatile right now, so it'll probably go up and down since you guys see this video on Sunday. In commodities, the food crisis in the world is intensifying. The beef herds in the United States have dropped since its lowest level in 1962. That's what, 60 years? Let's count them. 72, 82, 92, 2002, 12, 22. It's over 60 years. So in 1962, we had 184 million people living in the United States. The level of cows that we had then is the same level that we have now, except we have 331 million living in the US now. So prepare yourselves, because the preppers were right. UK, the largest supermarkets are now strictly rationing many fruits and vegetables. And 22% of British households are saying that they skipped meals or even fasting for a whole day in January. Natural gas prices in Europe already lost 40% of the prices in the last 2 months. For good news in Europe, this is due to the fact that they saved quite a ton, and they've been saving the fuel like never before. It's heading for another monthly drop of 15% as prices have been falling for the last 3 months. Colombia now is facing considerable uncertainty Due to the government's plan to reduce the contracting for hydrocarbon exploration. The government of Colombia receives more than 50% of its revenue from hydrocarbons, so nobody knows how they're going to replace that income. U.S. crude overall for the week, U.S. went up by 4.40% to just a touch under $80, while the international, which is called Brent, went up over 3%, just under $86. This is due to the fact that now that China has removed the restrictions for the pandemic, there's a lot of pent-up demand that's starting to increase again. And also the Fed, with some news that the Fed may pause interest rates by the summer. The interest rates, remember, are one of the most important things that affects the economy, since the economy has been over-financialized since 2008, 2009. So because they dropped the interest rates to the lowest ever in history of the world, okay, not the history of the United States, but the history of the world, we're literally living in the bubble of all bubbles right now. So any small movement in those interest rates can affect quite a bit the way that you and I live. After 5 consecutive weeks of gold losses, gold posted its first weekly gain. It went up by 2.49% to 1857. In January, the amount of gold that central banks purchased went up by 16%. Always remember what I tell you guys, it's not what they say, it's what they do. Now, why would central banks be buying a record amount of gold? Maybe because we're walking in a transition into a new financial system and they want to get a little bit of a bigger piece of the pie. Silver went up 2.39% to $21.36. And in financial and banking news, almost 1/3 of all U.S. shopping malls are closing as space available signs go up all over America. The number of retailers also that are in a distressed state has spiked to levels not seen in quite a long time. And news that the dollar is continuing to lose its purchasing power. Remember that the dollar, since we've used it since about, I think the date was 1906 or 1907. And let me back up because I didn't say that correctly. Since about, don't quote me on the day. You guys can just Google this to get the exact date. But we literally lost almost 100% of our purchasing power over the last century or so. Now the Iraq government, the central bank, is making an agreement with China to use their central bank currency, the yuan, instead of the dollar for all their commerce. And they're saying that it's the first time that imports would be financed from China in yuan, as Iraqi imports from China have been financed in US dollars only. So more and more people are not using dollars for commerce, which in the long term is going to be a very bad thing, because there's actually more dollars outside of the United States than there is inside the United States. So if people stop using the dollar and all of those dollars start coming back, it's going to create an inflationary environment, kind of like what Venezuela is living in, and even Argentina. In political news and the conspiracy news of the week, new guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics are saying that they need to treat childhood obesity early and aggressively with a treatment of weight loss drugs for children as young as 6. Bariatric surgery they're recommending for use as young as 13. Not, eat a healthy diet and run outside, get your fat out and running and eat healthy. And no. Go take a pill because we want to make sure that these drug companies get more money. You see how it works? And so there was a study that was done with a very prominent doctor that worked at Yale being one of the most prominent universities in the United States. And basically they were trying to find out a way to fatten pigs. So, there's more meat on the bone so they can make more money, the farmers. So they never published this, but it got leaked through this doctor that I mentioned to you guys from Yale. And they found that when they fed pigs whole milk or coconut oil, the pigs stayed lean. Whole milk, supposedly a lot of fat. When they found the best way to fatten pigs was to feed them skim milk, meaning 0 fat. So in other words, children on low-fat diets tending to be overweight and had markers for presage diabetes, they gain more weight by trying to eat fat-free things. They want to sell them pills. So you see how it's cause and effect, right? So they create the product, hey, it's fat-free, eat this to solve your fat problems, and take this pill now because it's going to make everybody money except for you. See how it works? The new medical codes for the pandemic virus on the, how do I say this without getting banned on YouTube? the status of whether you put that thing in your arm for the pandemic or not. They now have a code for it in the health system. Now, my question is, why would they be wanting to track people that haven't taken the thing in your arm? Let's not get into whether you should or shouldn't, or you're pro or against it, right? It's really a political issue I don't want to get into. But why would they want to track that? They never tracked, the polio thing in your arm, the V. It's called the V. The V and ends with vaccine, right? So something's not right. America's largest power grid is facing worsening reliability risks. The top right side of the United States, New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky, West Virginia, I believe Virginia as well. It's basically from Illinois to New Jersey. They're reducing the capacity of the power generation by 21% through 2030. Meanwhile, the population is continuing to increase. How that makes sense, I have no idea. The media is bewildered as the Russian economy is projected to grow in 2023 despite the sanctions from NATO. And in other political news as well, hundreds of thousands of gathering protesters, I should say. I always do the Spanish videos first, so I could always get blocked up in English. Now I don't speak any languages properly. So hundreds of thousands of protesters gather across Mexico to protest AMLO, which is the president's electoral law reforms. This always happens, right? It's what Stalin always says. It doesn't matter who votes. It's who counts the votes. Remember that. In economic news, China's economy is showing signs of stronger rebounds after the restrictions from the pandemic were removed. Their manufacturing numbers posted their biggest improvement in over a decade, and services activity climbed and the housing market has started to stabilize. The president in Brazil, Lula, which has promised, quote unquote, barbecue and beer for all, which is prosperity. 2 months into his presidency now, the economy isn't doing well at all. In 2022, the last quarter four, the GDP fell by 0.2%, while the last 5 quarters before that, it was actually growing. So that's going to snap his honeymoon. And in corporate news, Mercedes-Benz is hiking the cost of its cars by 43% as only the rich people can afford it. An average car now from Benz is costing about $76,600. Canada, in the crazy news for the week, granted permission to make and sell cocaine to a company called Adastra Labs. Their stock is up over 400%. The code is XTRX. And Apple shares are up over 5% as they're now saying that the pent-up demand from people from not buying an iPhone are going to help them to get through this tough economic period. Rivian, the electric car maker that only makes trucks, dropped over 18% ever since they didn't meet the sales or the revenue target sets by investors overall. And U.S. retailer Macy's is up over 11% after they beat the expectations on earnings and also meet them on revenue. They made about $8.26 billion for the quarter, and they're looking to see an increase in revenue as well in 2023. Meta Platforms, which is the owner of Facebook, went up over 6%, signs of a softer landing for the economy. And also they're announcing a dramatic price drop for all their virtual reality headsets, like the Quest Pro, for example. Elon Musk is back being the richest man in the world after Tesla stock has gone up by over 70%. They also had their version of Investor Day. I think they call it Tesla Day. If you guys want to help me with that in the comments. They basically had a 4-hour presentation where it didn't really align a lot of the new technologies and things that they wanted to come out. And they also talked about the New Mexico factory that they're going to have in Monterrey. They're going to have 7,000 jobs there just across the border. In trade news, Russian grain shipments are booming and has been an attractive bump in supplies. They went up by almost 2 times in January and February of last year. And in technologies, the German Greifswald nuclear fusion experiment, which, remember, we're trying to harness the power of the sun, is what they say. had the goal was to turn over 1 gigajoule of energy generated, and they actually achieved 1.3 gigajoules, which is a new record, which is great because if we ever get a hold of this technology, we won't have to use things like oil and carbon, which are supposedly bad for the environment. In investment news, Germany's transport minister is saying that they're not going to ban the EU's new ban on sales by 2035 of gas cars. Let me repeat that because I think I just got a tongue twister there. Germany is saying that they are not going to be along with the EU on trying to ban the new sale of gas-powered cars by 2035. They are, however, trying to reach a preliminary deal to be able to try to decrease emissions by 55% by 2030 based on the levels from 2021. And in 2022, while Europe and Canada and the US, while we have to stop our emissions, China, in the meantime, is constructing the equivalent of 2 large coal power plants per week, the highest in the last 7 years, to be able to go ahead and meet their power supply. So it's okay if China does it, but it's not okay if we do it, because we only save the environment if it's in the US. In China, it doesn't matter. And in unusual facts this week, a rare chandelier by Alberto Giacometti has caught the eye of a British painter, John Craxton. He bought it in the 1960s for just $700, and now it's worth $2.9 million. It sold at an auction in London. So if you guys want to make some extra money, go buy some $700 chandeliers. And in other news as well, in the UK, they're testing their national warning message system, which is going to last in the next few weeks in the UK. In addition to that, Alberta, Canada is testing their emergency alert system. 6 back-to-back tests today, which was basically this week. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. If you guys have any questions, leave them with the hashtag #AskMarcello. Let me find my button here. There you go. And we'll see you next week. And remember, the preppers were right.